Hi, I'm Dr. Anastasia Jones. Welcome to Sage Health TV. This is our weekly health booster, and today I've got a great tip for you. I want to talk to you about something called MCT oil for brain health. So first, you're probably wondering what MCT oil is. Actually stands for medium chain triglycerides, which is a very easily absorbed form of fat. A lot of people think fat, no, but you know what? Actually, fat is really, really good for us, and it's really, really good for our brain. This particular type of fat is, like I said, easily absorbed, and it's rapidly metabolized into something called ketone bodies. So ketone bodies, you may have heard, it's a very popular thing right now, the ketogenic diet, where we kind of switch our body over to running on fat. A lot of like weightlifters and people who want to lose weight are doing it, but it's actually amazing for your brain. And you can get the benefits of ketones without necessarily doing like the full ketogenic diet. So you might be wondering, how does MCT oil, how does ketones help my brains? Well, as some of you might know, our brain primarily runs on glucose, usually. Now, glucose is just a fancy name for sugar. So our brains are running on sugar most of the time. However, as we age, or as it becomes harder for our body to metabolize sugar, for some people, I think most people it gets a little harder as time gets on, our frontal cortex here, the like center of our thoughts and our higher functioning, starts to have a harder time utilizing glucose. The amazing thing about ketones is that they actually are just quick, boom, fast energy right to that brain center when we give our brain the opportunity to use them. What's really exciting about MCT oil and these brain ketones is that actually they've been doing some studies looking at mild cognitive impairment and also at Alzheimer's, either mild to moderate Alzheimer's of the late onset variety. And what they found in these studies is that even just short bursts of ketones, like once or twice a day, actually starts to improve like brain function, cognition, and memory pretty quickly, right? It doesn't mean you don't need to do the other changes, but this is one thing that can be done. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. It often comes in an oil form like this, and most people tolerate it really, really well. And what they found is that as people are having that impaired glucose function in their brain, it looks like approximately in early cognitive impairment that the glucose utilization goes down by about 60%, but that ketone utilization doesn't change at all, right? So this is going to work for everybody in terms of getting some energy to the brain. For people, not just people who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but people who have a predisposition to it, either dysregulation of glucose already, prediabetes, diabetes, or a maternal family history of Alzheimer's, then this can be a great option to start supporting the brain preventatively. Who doesn't want their brain to work better, right? So one last thing that's really interesting as well is that people with the ApoE4 gene, which is a genetic variant that can be expressed, people who are expressing that gene, it's about 10 to 15% of the population, actually have a much higher chance of developing Alzheimer's. And that is actually a gene that affects how we metabolize fat. So it's very important for the brain and cardiovascular system. And what they're finding is people with this ApoE4 genetic variant have a better response to these ketones. So that's something that can actually be tested for. We can test for that in our clinic. And so that's a really interesting aspect on whether or not MCT oil might be good, but it could also be good for just about anyone. The only people that might need to use MCT oil with caution would be people with gallbladder or liver disease or pancreatic dysfunction. And even then, it's usually okay. It just needs to be tested kind of carefully initially. But MCT is a great oil, good for you and good for your brain.